Hey, this is Tom from MVP Chess. Welcome back to my series on Bobby Fischer's seminal work, My 60 Memorable Games. In this video, we'll be analyzing game number 31 that Fischer played versus Tigran Petrosian in Bled 1961. You're not going to want to miss Fischer finally break down Petrosian's Caro-Kann. Before we jump into the analysis, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and join Team MVP. Thank you so much for your support. So, Tigran Petrosian was a Soviet Armenian grandmaster who in 1963 became the 9th world chess champion, defeating Botvinnik. He was known as Iron Tigran for his almost impenetrable defensive style. He really prioritized safety above all else. So it should come as no surprise that he liked to meet pawn e4, Fischer's best by test, by the super solid Caro-Kann. So that's what we had in this game. Fischer plays d4, and after d5, knight c3. Petrosian captures, and he goes for knight d7, which would eventually become known as the Karpov variation. Of course, this is 1961. Karpov has not become world champion yet. Of course, the main move of the Caro-Kann is bishop f5 in this position. But we have knight d7. Fischer simply develops. Knight f3. And after knight gf6, in the classical variation of the Caro-Kann, or the Capablanca variation, very often this knight will drop back to g3. But you notice the difference here is that there isn't a bishop on f5. So this wouldn't be a tempo-gaining move. Fischer said that in this variation, the knight on g3 tends to be misplaced. So that's why he decided to capture on f6 and develop his bishop to a very active square on c4. Bishop f5, queen e2, e6, and bishop g5. Okay, Fischer's intention in this position is to castle the queen side, to sharpen up the game. You know, he's trying to create winning chances, but Petrosian immediately snuffs them out by playing bishop g4. He's just basically, in this position, going for mass piece exchanges. Fischer castles, and after bishop e7, pawn to h3, Petrosian gives up the two bishops, but this allows him to take it back almost immediately. Knight d5, forcing the exchange of bishops. Fischer could try to keep it on the board, but that could just easily be met by bishop g5. So Fischer's unable to hold on to the advantage of the two bishops, and we have a position that really suits Petrosian's style. A lot of pieces have been exchanged. He has a very solid pawn structure, no weaknesses, and he's just going to sit back and basically play defensively and play for a draw. Not my cup of tea, but, Petrosian had a lot of success with this style. King b1, rook d8, queen e4. Fischer trying to coordinate his pieces and activate them, trying to create some sort of counterplay in the position. And Fischer was quite surprised that Petrosian went for this expansion on the queen side. If we jump back, he really thought that Petrosian was just going to simply castle to the queen side here. That would be more consistent with his style, just staying on the same side as white. Since white castled to the queen side, Fischer expected Petrosian to do the same so that he wouldn't be really subjected to an attack, but Petrosian decides to go for it on the queen side. Fischer drops the bishop back, and then we have pawn a5. So Fischer needs to be careful here how he's going to meet this pawn advance. And he plays a good move here. He plays pawn to c3. He notes if he had played a3 instead, then after b4, this is precisely what Petrosian wants. Lines are going to start opening on the queen side, and Fischer's king might be subject to an attack. That's why he played c3. Okay. Now, this wasn't the game continuation, but just to show you, he was planning to meet pawn to a4, continuing this advance with a3. Just really blockading this pawn phalanx on the dark squares, preventing any lines from really opening, and just squashing any initiative Petrosian would have on the queen side. But instead, he played queen d6. Okay, Fischer thought in this position that he was looking to play queen f4, seeking a queen exchange. So that's why he played pawn to g3. And after b4, Fischer meets that by pawn to c4. So Fischer's got a nice center. He's managed to keep the queen side closed, but this pawn on d4 could be a long-term weakness. Petrosian drops the knight back, hitting the queen, which comes to an active square on e5. This wasn't the game continuation. If Petrosian did capture, this would push the knight back to a more passive square, and after f4, knight c5, and bishop e2, Fischer's made a little bit of progress on the king side, has a decent space advantage, and can maybe look to try to infiltrate on the d file, but there's still not much in this position either. But instead, Petrosian played c5. So Fischer took this opportunity to keep the queens on the board and played queen g5. And he thought this was a good move. He said, at first I thought this was a nice shot. But in actuality, after pawn to h6, great move by Petrosian, he realized that this was a shock. Okay, so this wasn't the game continuation. But if Fischer were to grab on g7, the queen is going to find a really hard time extricating herself from this advanced position on the king side. Nice move in this position would be king e7 from Petrosian. And notice, Petrosian has all of these potential flight squares under control. After d takes c5, queen c6, Petrosian's threatening some nasty tactics with capturing the bishop and capturing the rook in the corner. So Fischer gives bishop g6, but after rook df8, bishop takes f7, queen e4 check, and rook h7. I know that was a long line, but Fischer managed to calculate that and realize that in this critical variation, his queen would actually become trapped. So that's why after h6, he bailed on his idea of capturing on g7 and instead played queen takes c5. Okay, not what he wanted. He played queen g5 to keep queens on the board, to keep the game more lively, keep more dynamism in the position. So unfortunately, he had to exchange queens. King e7, now that the queens are off, Petrosian doesn't need to castle. Keeping the king in the center is the way to go. So king e7 connecting the rooks. Fischer begins pushing his passed pawn, but this pawn is doubled and weak and is doomed. But at least Petrosian will have to take some time to capture it. This allows Fischer to bring his other rook into the game. And after rook takes c6, rook e5, targeting the pawn on a5, Petrosian defends. And we have a very interesting moment in the game. Fischer plays bishop e4. Now, Fischer said as soon as he put bishop e4 on the board, Petrosian offered him a draw. Fischer said he was ready to accept the draw. However, just at that moment, reigning world champion Mikhail Tal happened to be observing the game. And Fischer said he was doing so very anxiously because he realized that if this game were drawn, it would basically clinch him clear first in Bled 1961. So Fischer declined the draw. He said he did it not because he thought White had any winning chances in the position, but he didn't want to give Tal the satisfaction. And it's a really good thing that he did that, because with his next move, Petrosian made an inaccuracy. This is what happens when you offer a draw and your opponent declines, and I encourage all of my students to do this, okay? Especially when your opponent is offering a draw in a non-theoretical position, right? It's not like this is an opposite color bishop ending or a king and pawn ending where Petrosian has the opposition, you know. There's still a lot of play left in this game, okay? And when an opponent offers you a draw and you refuse, psychologically, it can be difficult to deal with that and then get back in the mindset of trying to find the best move in the position. And Petrosian errs here. He should just play the very simple knight takes e4. And after rook takes, this is a stone cold draw. Okay, I'm looking at a modern day engine right now that's reading triple zeros. But instead he plays rook d6. So I'll turn it over to you in this position. White to play. How does white gain an advantage from this position? What was Petrosian's mistake? Pause your videos and have a think. So these are one of those kind of quiet positions that if you're not focused, and Petrosian had clearly broken his concentration by offering this draw. He thought Fischer was going to accept, and then he didn't because Tal was right there. He just overlooked a really simple continuation. So congratulations if you found bishop takes a8 in this position. Okay. Now, it doesn't win material, but the imbalance that it creates is, first of all, Fischer's able to capture this rook that was on the queen side. Okay. Now his pawns have more freedom to advance. Fischer also gains a really critical tempo for his king. King c2. Now, if Petrosian were to retreat this king on the d file, right, that's like ideally where he would like the rook to, especially given Petrosian's style, right, bring it back in a defensive role, look to restrict the white king. After rook takes a5 rather, this game would be completely over. Fischer would have a 3v1 queenside pawn majority. The king would likely scoop up the b4 pawn, and this would be a trivial win. That's why after king c2, and I'm sure this is what Petrosian just missed or didn't even calculate, he has to go all in and play king f1, rook f1, and just start grabbing pawns on the king side. But this allows Fischer's queenside pawns to just storm down the board. Rook takes a5, rook takes f2, and king b3. So again, material is still even, but look where Petrosian's rook is. Okay, it would much rather be on the queen side in defense. Instead, it had to go pawn grabbing and only improve the position of Fischer's king. This is a big deal. Rook h2. Okay, Petrosian's kind of on tilt in this position. It would have been better here to perhaps play knight d7. Look to blockade the c5 square. Get your pieces into a better defensive posture. But instead he plays rook h2. And after c5, Fischer's just basically winning this position. Petrosian's rook is just too out of place. He's done a poor job of coordinating his pieces to stop Fischer's pawn majority. King d8, rook b5, nice move. Fischer prepares to meet king c7 with rook b7. Petrosian grabs another pawn for his troubles, but look how out of play Petrosian's rook is. We have rook b8, king c7, rook b7, king c6, and in this position, I will turn it over to you. After Fischer's next move, Petrosian resigned the game. So pause your videos and try to see if you can find Fischer's winning move. So congratulations if you saw that Petrosian basically brought his king to c6 to put himself out of his misery. He was basically falling on his own sword. He could have put up more of a defense by moving the king to the back rank, but I think he was just tired of looking at this position. So after king c6 and king c4, congratulations if you found this move. There is no stopping the very simple rook takes f7 checkmate in this position. The only way that black can prolong the game is by playing some absurd move like rook h4, giving a spite check. But after g takes h4, rook takes f7 is just going to be the end of the world. There's no stopping the imminent mate. Wow. A really, I would say, bizarre game, but also a really great lesson in chess psychology that you can use in your own games. Very often players offer a draw not because they think it's theoretically drawn and they're confident in holding. Normally it's because, now this may not have been the case with Petrosian, but I'm speaking generally here, that they're uncomfortable with the position, right? There's something about the position that they don't like. Perhaps they're short of time. Perhaps they're feeling tired. There could be a lot of reasons that your opponent offers a draw. It's a really good psychological weapon to refuse that draw and to play on. Okay, it's very difficult, and I learned this myself the hard way in some tournament games, to just kind of recalibrate your mind and say, okay, my opponent wants to play this out. I thought I was about to sign the score sheets and off the hook, but now I've got to refocus. And very often, blunders and mistakes creep up in the next few moves. And that's what happened to Petrosian here. So Petrosian, I'm sure after the game, was probably pretty annoyed by Tal for hanging around the board and coercing Fischer to play on. But I'm just speculating there. I hope you enjoyed the game and this analysis of Game 31. Don't forget, smash that subscribe button, join Team MVP, and turn on your notifications. You're not going to want to miss my next installment of the series, which will be game number 32. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day.